Yep, it's the top of the hour on NBC News Now, and we are starting with that desperate search for survivors in New Mexico as deadly flooding in the land of enchantment has killed at least 2 people there. Wild video shows folks stranded on roofs, hundreds of rescues, and new concern that more rain is on the way. We are live in the hardest part of that state, hardest hit part. Also at this hour, serious questions about those big checks handed out by Elon Musk. Big checks with big money. But is it legal to just offer a chance at $1 million to swing state voters? And then in our region, we're going to hear from critics who say that Israel's promoting a surrender or starve strategy in Gaza as a top Biden advisor calls the situation in that region, quote, out of control. Plus, why Disney is slow walking its succession plan. The big skepticism right now over whether Bob Iger will actually give up control of the House of Mouse. And we are revisiting a North Carolina family who thought they were safe from the storms, and then they lost everything again in Hurricane Hallie. We're going to take you to Asheville later in the newscast. Hi there, I'm Tom Costello. I am in for Hallie Jackson, who is on assignment right now. There's a state of emergency in New Mexico as the search there is on for survivors of the deadly flooding that is deluging the Roswell area. The National Guard tells us 2 people are dead, dozens more hospitalized, but hundreds have been rescued. Take a look at the local sheriff standing on the roof of his patrol car to escape the floods. Emergency crews saving folks that you see stuck on the roof of actually a convention center, just trying to get to higher ground as the floodwaters kept rising there. Another rescue team pulled a dog to safety from the threatening floods. This area of New Mexico has been swamped with something like 4 months of rain in just a few hours. Literally, cars have been floating with their headlights on, trapped on roads and in parking lots. All roads leading to and from Roswell right now are shut down. And meteorologists say it might not yet be over. More rain could be on the way, with tornadoes also possible in that area, right down there in the southern part of New Mexico. The record-setting weather events appear linked to our changing climate and happening in a region that is already struggling with devastating wildfires this year. NBC's Guad Venegas is in Roswell, New Mexico for us right now. Guad, how bad is the situation where you are at this hour?
Tom, well, the water has receded in parts of Roswell where we saw some of that deadly flooding. You can see behind me some of the destruction left behind, items that were in this home. There's a washer and parts of the structure that collapsed. We're just a couple feet away from a river. This is one of the rivers that overflowed. You can see the damage. There's a pickup truck inside of that garage. And again, this is one of the structures that's very close to a river that overflooded. The residents here tell me that they saw the water rise 5 feet in the street, much of that water going into their homes. A lot of the individuals here escaped and helped others evacuate their homes as those waters were coming up when they got that heavy rainfall. Let's hear from one of the residents just down the street talking to me about what it was like when he woke up that night.
When we initially woke up, it was, it was an inch or 2. And then, like I said, within minutes, it was mid-shin and just only going higher.
Oh, it's all covered in mud.
That's all done for. The water was flowing, it was flowing north, kind of northeast, like a river. Even.
All of this?
Yeah. So, I couldn't even get to my truck because of how strong it was coming up the roads.
And today, a lot of these residents, Tom, waking up to just inches of mud inside their homes, or even here where I'm standing. This is a backyard, but everywhere we walk, there's just mud. Kind of difficult to get around.
Yeah,
and I'm going to show you a fence over on this side that was swept away by the current. This is one of the fences that was over there. And all of these properties have fences that were either torn down or washed up, swept away from other properties. And earlier you showed a clip of the sheriff, the county sheriff, that also got stuck in the flood water. Let's hear some more from the sheriff.
That is the side of my truck. And there are multiple vehicles. Came into this not expecting that much water. And before I know it, I was swept off into this.
No one expected this much water that fast. I mean, this is record-setting rainfall. It was almost 6 inches. It broke the record that was set over 100 years ago, Tom.
You know, I know that area pretty well. It does not have the infrastructure, the equipment to respond to something like this, right? It's not Albuquerque. It's not El Paso.
Well, that's why the state has come together. You've got the state police helping out. So you also have the National Guard, of course, local agencies helping each other out, and a lot of neighbors that have also done what they can to help with the cleanup efforts. So, yes, this is about 3 hours away from Albuquerque, east in the eastern part of New Mexico. It's a town known for the alien theme iconography here, right? So there's a conspiracy theory that people used to say that a UFO had landed here. So there's a lot of tourism that comes into this town because of that. But of course, now it is the spotlight because of the heavy rainfall and these flash floods that, as you mentioned earlier, have been deadly, Tom.
Yeah. All right, Guad. Thank you very much. Guad Venegas, who's in the region for us. All right, now to the campaign trail where early voting begins in parts of Florida, a state that just weeks ago looked a lot like this. The historic hurricanes, Hallie and Milton, ravaged much of the entire Gulf Coast. And there are big questions about how the storms might impact the election. Already, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is changing some election rules to relieve some of the stress for people directly in that storm's path. And former President Trump spreading misinformation about FEMA's response to the storms. He's visited parts of North Carolina devastated by flooding from Hallie, telling Arvon Hilliard, there is no reason to believe the storm will impact the outcome in the state.
Is there any concern or specific reasoning that you have to believe at this point in time, 3 weeks in, that the results of the election in North Carolina will not be credible or legitimate because of the storm's aftermath?
No, I think in a way it's the opposite. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. But the fact that they'd come out and vote in record numbers is pretty amazing to me.
Again, Florida was one of 8 states where early voting is beginning, and that's where NBC's Jesse Kirsch is right now. He's in Miami. Jesse, what are you hearing about the impact these storms might have on the voting there in Florida and even in the region?
Yeah, so Tom, first off, let's zoom out on the map of Florida for a moment, right? Just remind people watching at home, we're in Miami on the southeast part of the coast. It's to the north and west of us on the Gulf Coast of Florida where these storms had made landfall earlier in the year. But as you mentioned, the governor at the state level taking action to give more flexibility, both as far as how early voting, how mail-in voting is being carried out, as well as where people will physically be voting on Election Day in some cases. So the storm creating some adaptation. The storm also potentially becoming a bit of a political football, shaking up the Senate race here between the incumbent Senator Rick Scott and his Democratic challenger, Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, a former congresswoman. So that's something to be keep an eye on as well. We spoke with one voter about this earlier, someone who voted the Republican ticket up and down. She said, here's part of what she shared.
I think Ron DeSantis did a great job when it came to, I mean, here in Florida, when it came to being ready. He's doing a wonderful job. And to be very honest, if he ran for president, I'd probably vote for him.
So there you go. That's one voter here. We also spoke with someone who's supporting Vice President Harris, and I asked that voter about it being enthusiasm for Harris versus not wanting to see former President Trump reelected. And for that voter, he said that the tipping of the scales, if you will, leaned toward it being more about an anti-Trump vote. So we've got both sides out here, Tom.
Okay, speaking of Mr. Trump, new trouble, legal trouble for him, right? And this could hit his wallet?
Yeah, so he is now facing a defamation lawsuit from the Central Park Five. That's a group of men who were wrongly blamed and put it behind bars for an incident in Central Park involving a rape that they were accused of. That group has filed this lawsuit because the former president in the debate against Vice President Harris suggested that the group had pleaded guilty. They had not done so. They maintained their innocence even while they were behind bars. They have since been exonerated. He's now facing that lawsuit, and the Trump campaign, for its part, is calling this election interference, calling it frivolous, and suggesting this is about just trying to keep Trump from regaining election and waving it off in so many words, Tom.
Okay, Jesse, thank you. Jesse Kirsch. Vice President Harris sticking to battleground Midwest states for now. You see her live in Michigan in a conversation with Liz Cheney, all part of this whole country over party theme that she's been working to win over women and Trump skeptic Republicans like the former Congresswoman herself, Miss Cheney. It's one of 3 counties that she's hitting in areas that you might call Haley country. Places with a high concentration of Nikki Haley voters in the 2024 primary. She'll now go to Wisconsin after again slamming Trump in Pennsylvania in just the last few hours.
There are things that he says that will be the subject of skits and laughter and jokes. But words have meaning coming from someone who aspires to stand behind the seal of the President of the United States.
Even with this race very tight, there is one area that she is clearly beating the billionaire candidate on. It's money, believe it or not. New filings show she has way outraised Trump. NBC's Yamiche Alcindor is in Chester County, Pennsylvania, where Ms. Harris spoke. Yamiche, we understand that you're getting new details about the Harris campaign strategy. Why are these areas of the county ripe for that message right now? Of the country, I should say. Why are they ripe for the message right now?
Well, they're ripe for that message because the history shows that they were counties that were looking for an alternative to Donald Trump in this election. So if you put it up for folks in Chester County, Pennsylvania, which is where I'm standing, 24% of voters in the Republican primary voted for Nikki Haley, and that's after she dropped out of the race. So that shows you just how much people did not want to have Donald Trump at the top of the Republican ticket. You look at Oakland County, Michigan, 33% voted for Nikki Haley. Then if you look at Waukesha County in Wisconsin, 14% again after Nikki Haley dropped out. All of those places are going to be places where the vice president is today alongside Liz Cheney. And they're having really these intimate settings. That they're not the big raucous rallies. Instead, they're the Republican and the Democrat sitting together talking about the fact that they see this election as really an election about the future of American democracy, saying that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, that he's a threat to the Constitution, and that even if they have policy differences, that you have to choose Vice President Harris just because of putting country over party, Tom.
You know, Yamiche, you've covered politics for a long time, and based on your experience covering campaigns, how much should that matter, money versus the polls, which still show just an incredibly tight race?
Well, it's really interesting because you think back to a year like 2016 where Donald Trump wasn't the Republican who was raising the most money, and he still was able to be the person who beat out something like 17 other Republicans to become their nominee. But that being said, money matters because messaging matters, getting on the airwaves matters. So if you look at the two campaigns, you see a real differentiation here. They have $222 million raised by the Harris-Wallace campaign, $270 million that have been spent, and then $187 million on hand. You look at that to the Trump, they're not even half that at $63 million raised, $77.5 million spent, in cash on hand, $120 million. And then when you look at the actual polls, which is really, I think, underscoring why money isn't the whole story here, the polls are still very, very close. You look at a place like Arizona where Trump is up by 3 points. Of course, Georgia up by 4 points for Harris. 2 points for Harris in Michigan, 3 points in North Carolina, a tie in Nevada, and then, of course, Pennsylvania, where I'm standing, Harris is up by 2 points. But in most of these cases, what you see is a race that is a margin of error race. That's what we're going to be saying to people for the next 15 days because it is a close race. And while money could move that, and the Harris campaign is hoping that money moves that, there's also just the vibes and the messaging and the advertising that comes just from being covered as a candidate. And that's where Donald Trump thinks that he might have the advantage, Tom.
Yeah, let's underscore that poll is the latest Washington Post poll, but there are a lot of polls showing Trump may be up, for example, or they're neck and neck and neck and neck. So you can believe the polls you want to believe. Yamiche, thank you very much. By the way, don't miss tomorrow night. Our very own Hallie Jackson will sit down with the vice president one-on-one. That'll be on NBC Nightly News tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Other news, we're getting new details about the deadly helicopter crash in Houston. The moment captured on security cameras when the chopper slammed into a radio tower, resulting in a very big explosion. There it is. Another angle captured by a witness shows the fiery wreckage crashing to the ground and taking the tower down with it. 4 people died in the crash. One of those victims, we're told, a child. Police say the accident spread fire and debris across a 4-acre area. Nobody on the ground injured. And now police, the FAA, and the NTSB all looking into what caused this tragedy. NBC's Stephen Romo has been following the story for us. And Stephen, we know the FAA issued a notice to pilots that not all the lights were working on that tower at the time, right?
Yeah, certainly that is getting a lot of attention, specifically from Houston media. The helicopter crew for KTRK TV have been saying that they've noticed those lights out before, a problem that, of course, caused them some concern. We do have to point out, though, there are some lights on in the video that we're seeing here. It's unclear if those are the proper lights, the ones that need to be lit at the time. Of course, that's some of the many questions remaining. But, Tom, when we talk about the flight path here, we know that this was a very populated area of Houston where this started. It took off from Ellington Field and traveled to the east side of downtown before it went down. And there are a lot of homes and businesses, buildings in that area. People there are saying they're very lucky that the tower folded like it did sort of on itself. The debris field is wide, but there are no actual reports of injuries there. Pretty remarkable considering that damage.
Yeah, it is, and it fell virtually in the backyard of Houston Fire Station 17, which is a pretty big and well-equipped station, and they immediately responded. The NTSB investigation, as you know, always takes quite a while, right? We're talking about months or even a year or more.
Certainly, and it's not just a single aircraft in this situation. They are also looking at that tower itself. We're also waiting for the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office to release the names of the victims in this situation. Meanwhile, they're still trying to put together this puzzle of what happened. Here's an update we got from police earlier today.
What our Vehicular Crimes Division reconstruction crew will do is conduct a three-dimensional scan of that area. That'll include photographs, which will take approximately 4 to 5 hours. It may take longer. Once that's done, within 2 to 3 days, the Houston Police Department will provide that evidence to the NTSB and the FAA for them to conduct their investigation.
And this debris field so large, Houston police are now telling any neighbors in the area who may come across debris to let them know so they can add it to the investigation, Tom.
Yep, don't touch it. Stephen, thank you very much. In Georgia, investigators are trying to determine what caused an aluminum gangway to collapse, forcing 20 people into the water and killing 7. Take a look. The gangway right there being taken away from the dock to a secure facility where it will be examined for any clues as to what might have caused it to collapse. It comes as we're learning the names of the victims, all senior citizens, ranging in age from 73 to 93. All 7 were visitors to Sapelo Island off the coast of Georgia, where about 700 people gathered to celebrate Gula Geechee history. That is the blend of African culture and American life in that area. Priya Sridhar is joining us now. And Priya, I understand investigators say the gangway was rebuilt just a few years ago and went through regular inspections. But what are they going to be looking at for possible clues right now?
Yeah, Tom, that's right. This gangway was actually built in 2021. And as you mentioned, authorities are saying that they were undergoing daily inspections. However, some residents of the island who I've spoken with have actually disputed that. The gangway looks basically like the one that you can see behind me here. It essentially connects the ferry to the land. Now, the only way that Sapelo Island is accessible is through the ferry. I'm here in Meridian, Georgia, which is about an hour south of Savannah. And anyone who wants to go to Sapelo Island has to leave from here. So one of the things they're looking at, Tom, is that typically on any given day when the ferry was running, only about 100 people would make their way over to the island. But as you mentioned, because of this special holiday commemorating the Gullah Geechee community, there was actually 700 people over there at the time. They also believe that there were about 20 to 40 people on that gangway awaiting for the ferry to come back over here to Meridian. The one thing the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, which is the lead agency investigating the cause of exactly how this accident occurred, is telling us is that they don't believe that a boat actually hit the dock. So that's as far as we know right now, Tom, regarding the investigation.
And what I understand, you've been talking to family members as well as the investigative team on the scene. What else are you learning about the victims? Priya, can you hear me? I think we've lost Priya. We'll check back in the next hour, but all of those victims were senior citizens. A highly anticipated legislative hearing today is moving forward without its key witness, a death row inmate who was supposed to be executed in a controversial shaken baby case, as we're just hearing from a juror in his original case saying they got the conviction wrong. Robert Robertson was set to testify before Texas lawmakers today about his case after his execution was postponed last week due to an unexpectedly successful last-ditch effort to buy him some time. But there was some back and forth between lawmakers and the state's attorney general about how Robertson was going to testify, in person or remotely. The big question now, what happens with Robert Robertson? He could still be executed, but lawmakers tell our Lester Holt Robertson deserves a chance.
How much time do you think you have bought Robertson?
Well, the statutes in Texas are clear. When he was not executed last week, as they intended to, it starts the clock all over again. And at a minimum, Robert deserves a new trial.
With Robert Robertson's case, there are just way too many questions, way too many concerns for us to stay silent on this.
You'll recall that back in January of 2023, make it 2003, a jury convicted him of killing his 2-year-old daughter, Nikki, based on a shaken baby syndrome diagnosis that his lawyers and medical experts say is now outdated and questionable. But the state stands by the conviction. NBC's Priscilla Thompson is joining us now from Austin. Priscilla, the purpose of this hearing today was to discuss Texas's junk science law and whether it could have helped Robertson's case, right? So explain the law to us and what the purpose of the hearing today might be.
Yeah, so the legislature's actions here center on this law that says that if a case is found to have been decided based on faulty forensic evidence, then that has to be reviewed. And so they are reviewing this case to determine if the Court of Criminal Appeals has acted appropriately or if they are taking a position by not retrying this case that is in opposition to this new law. And so this is another day of testimony. They also heard testimony last week, and today they heard from, right now, actually, they're hearing from a Court of Appeals judge who was in the court at the time when this law went into effect about how it was implemented. And they also heard from Dr. Phil, who walked through the shaken baby diagnosis and how that has changed. The medical consensus around that has changed. But they also heard from a juror who spoke very passionately about how she has followed this case. And when it became clear to her that there was a possibility that this man, who she believed was innocent, was now going to be killed, that she could just not live with herself if she didn't come forward. I want to play a bit of her testimony.
Did the jury hear everything that you needed to hear to make a correct decision in this case?
With the evidence now, no.
Knowing what you know now, did the jury get it right?
No.
Knowing what you know now, do you believe Robert Robertson murdered his daughter, Nikki?
No.
How strongly do you feel about that?
100%.
And these proceedings were open to the public. They are being live streamed. And so the hope from those lawmakers is that this could lead to a new trial for Robertson. Tom?
Priscilla, the fact that Robertson didn't testify today doesn't mean that he won't testify at all, right? And I understand the governor is finally breaking his silence on this issue as well.
Right. So Robertson is still under subpoena. He could still testify, but it is an open question because there appears to be a stalemate right now between the Attorney General and the attorneys, with basically Texas Attorney General and the Department of Corrections saying they cannot safely bring a death row inmate to the Capitol. There's nowhere to hold him. There are no prisons nearby. And so this needs to be done. This testimony needs to be done virtually. But you have attorneys for Robertson saying because of his autism, he is not going to present. It may be a disservice to him to have him present to them virtually. And also, he's just not familiar with that technology. And we also heard, as part of the Attorney General has also gone to the Texas Supreme Court asking them to reconsider this temporary restraining order. And he basically accused the legislator of trying to yield clemency power that is reserved for the governor. And we are now hearing from the governor through his attorneys in this amicus brief, highlighting that point as well, saying unless the court rejects that tactic, it can be repeated in every capital case, effectively rewriting the Constitution to reassign a power given only to the governor. But as it stands, Robertson remains under subpoena, so that execution has not been rescheduled. The soonest it could be rescheduled for would be early next year. Tom?
Okay, Priscilla, thank you very much. We have more breaking news, this time in the Middle East. New explosive Israeli strikes in Beirut in just the last hour. Take a look at the smoke filling the sky over Lebanon's capital. We want to go right now to NBC's Matt Bradley, who's on the scene for us. Matt, what more can you tell us about what Israel is targeting tonight?
Yeah, Tom, well, what we're seeing tonight is a bit similar to what we're seeing last night, which is actually kind of a real turn from what we've been seeing from the past couple of weeks. The Israelis have announced that they're targeting financial institutions tied to Hezbollah. So not really ostensible military targets, not the assassinations of top leaders that we've been seeing that have really been the main imprint of Israeli attacks here in Beirut and throughout all of Lebanon. Instead, it looks like financial institutions. Last night, the Israelis warned that they were going to be attacking basically banks, sort of commercial banks, Islamic banks that offer Islamic loans, which is to say without interest, to customers. They're for ordinary people, but the Israelis have said that these were a front for Iranian financing of Hezbollah operations. Now, we heard quite a lot of explosions last night from our perch right here, looking out over southern Beirut. Now, this area is Dahia and its environs. This is a suburb of Beirut. It's a Shiite majority area. And as you can see right behind me, there's actually more explosions, it looks like, going off right now. Now, so you can continue to see this. We've been seeing these bombardments every day for the past month, during the day, during the night. But then just a couple of hours ago, the Israelis came out and said that they were going to be targeting a stockpile of cash that they said that Hezbollah was hoarding underground, underneath a hospital, also in this neighborhood behind us. Now, we don't know whether these bombardments that we just saw within the past hour or the one that you just saw on your screen just now behind me, whether or not that was connected with those Israeli warnings. Again, these are rolling warnings and rolling bombardments, so we can't really make any connection between the two.
Okay, Matt, we'll watch it with you. Thank you very much. Coming up from us, listeria fears pulling a breakfast favorite from some shelves. Why you might want to wait on that waffle. But first, getting ready to break out your wallet for the holidays, the major factors influencing how much you might spend this season. We'll tell you how much you're going to spend when we come back. Coming up in the 5 things, a virtual portal between New York and Dublin drew big crowds, and where it's headed next. But first, a media giant Disney today moved towards a future without longterm leader Bob Iger, and the board is taking its sweet time doing it. The company has announced that it will name his successor sometime in 2026, a full year later than they had planned initially to announce a successor. Disney says the move gives it more time to vet candidates to lead the $175 billion corporation. But the delay also means Iger's second stint in the top job will last at least another year. You may recall Iger led Disney for 15 years before stepping down back in 2020, only to retake the CEO job after his first handpicked successor was fired in 2022. Iger has pushed his retirement now back 5 times to stay in the job. Let's go now to CNBC's Alex Sherman. Alex, what does this succession plan really say about the company's attitude towards Iger and Disney's future? It's almost like he's irreplaceable.
Yeah, look, the Disney board has long thought Bob Iger is irreplaceable. You referenced it. He's pushed back his retirement 5 different times. What does that say? It says that the company really wants this guy to stick around. And you also referenced that his contract as CEO doesn't actually end until December 31st, 2026. So already he was going to be around. The change here is that initially Disney was thinking about announcing someone in 2025 and then having that person more or less be groomed by Bob Iger, who would still be the CEO, but at least the heir apparent would be named. Now pushing it to 2026, I think to your question, you could read this in a couple different ways. One, it does cement the fact that Iger will at least be sticking around. He's not going to be moving up his retirement, you wouldn't think. But the person who's stepping down as the chairman, Mark Parker, was very close to Bob Iger. And so he'll be replaced by James Gorman, who doesn't have that same close relationship. So maybe Iger loses a little bit of his influence.
You know, he has also, or at least Disney has alienated some Disney families because they keep raising the price of Disney Plus, right? And then in addition, this whole lawsuit, you may recall over the summer, in which a woman who somebody in her family had died at Disney World, and then Disney said, you can't sue us. It's got to go to arbitration because you are a Disney Plus subscriber. There's a clause saying any lawsuit against Disney must go to arbitration. even if you die at the park? I mean, that seemed a little bit crazy.
So this issue of prices going up in terms of that irritating various different customers, look, that has been an issue for years at Disney. I mean, it was an issue when Bob Chapek was the CEO, when Iger stepped away. It was an issue when Bob Iger was the CEO the first time. The fact of the matter is this company is sort of a cash machine when it comes to both the parks and the media entities. So if you don't think Disney Plus's price is going to continue to go up and up and up, you don't understand the media industry. That is only going to go in one direction in the coming years. And by the way, ESPN, which is owned by Disney, is going to launch its own streaming service in 2025, and that's going to be priced high too.
Yeah, and just for the record, they got so much pushback on that whole lawsuit thing, they essentially allowed the lawsuit to continue. They bowed out on that arbitration clause. They're always interesting to watch. Alex Sherman, thank you very much. Let's get you over now to the 5 things our team thinks you might want to know about this evening. Number 1, Sean Diddy Combs now facing 5 new civil lawsuits accusing him of rape and sexual assault. The new claims come from 2 men and 3 women, some accusing him of drugging them. One woman says the abuse happened when she was only 13. According to the suit, Combs now is being held without bail on federal racketeering and sex trafficking charges. His team has not responded to NBC's request for comment. Number 2, a popular tourist site in New York City reopening today with new safety features. You know, though, you may know about this. It's called the Vessel. This tower closed 3 years ago after several suicides. And now the structure has mesh barriers to keep visitors safe without blocking the view. The top floors of the Vessel will still be off limits for visitors, though. Number 3, dozens of frozen waffle brands are under recall because of a possible listeria contamination. The FDA says the products were sold at stores including Walmart and Target, including brands like Kodiak and Good & Gather. The company, Treehouse Foods, is urging customers to toss out the products and contact it for credit. So far, no reports of anybody actually getting sick. Number 4, the Biden administration is proposing a rule that would require private health insurance companies to provide over-the-counter birth control pills and contraceptives for free. If approved, the rule would go into effect next year. Number 5, a video portal that connects people across the world is set to open in Philadelphia this time. You probably heard about this earlier this year. It linked New York City to Dublin through a 24/7 live stream of both cities. And now it's moving to Philly. No word yet on where it might actually connect or what city it will connect to. Well, we may not even be done with October yet, but retailers are already trying to predict just how much we are all going to be spending this holiday season. CNBC says there are going to be 4 big factors that will really shape the shopping habits going into the season. First, the election and the news cycle that comes with it. And then, of course, the hurricane damage and unseasonably warm temperatures. It's 80 degrees today in Washington. Plus, there's the fact that the holiday rush might be on overdrive. There's less time this year between Thanksgiving and Christmas than last year. And finally, people may actually be starting their shopping earlier than usual to find their better deals and stretch the budgets. CNBC's Melissa Repko is joining us now to break it all down. Melissa, a former Target exec, is really emphasizing that the election and the high prices could be the big factor this season, right? So what are the experts you're talking to saying?
Tom, we're hearing from retailers and a lot of retail experts that people are still very price conscious. They're being selective about their purchases. And even though inflation has cooled, the reality is prices haven't gone down. So people are still feeling that pressure to stretch their dollars, and they're being more deal hunting in their mentality as we go into the holiday season.
There's some concern, I understand, for some optimism for retailers, though, right? I mean, inflation is down. It's going down. We just got a consumer spending report back from the Commerce Department that retail sales were actually up in September.
That's right, Tom. The average shopper expects to spend just shy of $1,800, according to Deloitte's survey, and that would be up about 8% compared to a year ago. But interestingly, people plan to spend more on decorations and they plan to spend more on experiences, but it's about flat when it comes to gifts. So retailers may have to work a little harder to get people to fill up their baskets with gifts this year. And again, that deal hunting mentality will be top of mind. So people are going to be looking for events like Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And that's why you saw a lot of those deals start early in October.
I'm not kidding you. I just said to my wife this morning, I said, should we be thinking about gifts already for Christmas? I mean, the timing, yeah, you're right. People are talking about it anyway. All right, Melissa, thank you very much. Good info. Coming up later in the newscast, how a backseat nap turned into an accidental kidnapping. We're going to explain. Watch that tow truck driver. It's a strange odyssey. Now to our original in-depth reporting on a topic we watch closely here. We're taking you back to the Middle East, where there was just these new explosives in Beirut, Israeli strikes. The fighting is also raging inside Gaza, as you know, with a human rights group saying that in Israel there are alarming signs that the Israeli military is beginning to quietly implement the general's plan. Now, that's a dramatic strategy to force anybody left in the north to evacuate, to surrender, or starve. Here's Hallie.
For the residents of northern Gaza, this is what hell on earth looks like. Since the start of October, little to no food has gone in, and IDF airstrikes have killed hundreds, according to the Gazan Civil Defense. The conditions on the ground leading some to believe Israel is already implementing a radical strategy known as the General's Plan, forcing the evacuation of every resident in the north, anyone left considered a combatant, a military target, deprived of food, water, and medicine, starve or surrender. A plan proposed by this man to the Israeli parliament in September, former National Security Council head Giora Eiland. We caught up with him in his office near Tel Aviv, where he claims his strategy comes from the U.S. Department of Defense.
If you manage to evacuate civilians, it is allowed and even recommended to cause a siege and to bring the people who are there to die in starvation. This is what is written according to the Marian Manual.
This DoD Law of War manual, in fact, calls a siege permissible rather than recommended. But this former general, who says he still receives official intelligence briefings, says his plan is not being implemented because it is not a full siege, and civilians, he says, are still in the way. If you tell 300,000 people, basically, at the end of the barrel of a gun, you leave or we kill you or we starve you, how is that?
No. We tell them to leave to a safe area, which is the area of Muasi, along the coast.
That has been repeatedly bombed by Israel.
Not at all.
It has been. I have actually done stories on it and geolocated strikes in Muasi after people were told to evacuate.
Sometimes when the terrorists happen to be there, it is a relatively safe place.
The IDF denies implementing the general's plan, but 27 members of parliament and ministers, some from Benjamin Netanyahu's own party, publicly support it. Several times since the beginning of October, Israeli authorities have posted evacuation orders online and dropped leaflets over areas like Jabalia and Beit Lahia. In the last year, many have been forced to leave the north, but 400,000 people remain there, told to go. Some won't, and some can't. But the Major General says
there is no way that you cannot evacuate people, even elderly people or people who cannot walk or people who are wounded or whatever. This is all nonsense.
For veteran Palestinian politician Mustafa Barghouti, this plan is already a reality.
I think now everybody sees that the so-called general's plan is being implemented. A plan to starve the people in the north of Gaza, to bombard them continuously, to kill so many of them, to force them to leave Gaza, to leave the north of Gaza. It is a plan to ethnically cleanse the whole north of Gaza.
To what end? Do you think it's eventually to annex parts of the Gaza Strip?
Absolutely.
On the ground, emergency services tell our teams in Gaza these areas are almost entirely sealed off to rescue workers already. An IDF spokesperson posting this photo, claiming these residents of Jabalia are leaving willingly. But the exhaustion of those forced to flee once again is etched on the faces of the displaced. There is no place for me to stay, this woman says. We lived through hard times. It is enough. While others say they would rather stay than venture into the unknown. I have my 5 daughters with me. I want to stay in my house and die with dignity, this man says. For Major General Eiland, this is simply what happens in war.
So it is probably the most common military act and this is to conquer land from your enemy, start speaking about conquering this area for purely military reasons.
Whether it's the exact general's plan or some version of it, for the civilians of northern Gaza, it matters little. The forced displacement and bloodshed and hunger are already their daily reality.
Hallie is in Tel Aviv. To underscore what you said on the report, NBC has our own teams on the ground in Gaza doing our own reporting and our own fact-checking on what's happening there. What more do we know, by the way, about where the U.S. stands on Israel's ongoing operations there in Gaza, especially after Israel killed the top Hamas commander?
Yeah, and it's important to underscore that all the material practically that you saw in that piece was filmed by our NBC teams inside of Gaza. As far as U.S. Pressure, you might remember last week that there was a letter sent to Israeli authorities, co-signed by the Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, asking that Israel improve humanitarian conditions and noting particularly the dire situation in the northern part of the Gaza Strip outlined in our report. They gave Israel 30 days or possibly face consequences. Those consequences could include a limit on the sale and the transfer of arms. And this is coming as Antony Blinken is in Israel once again. It's his 11th trip since October 7th. There is little optimism, though, it has to be said, across the region for a ceasefire. The Israeli Prime Minister himself, after the death of Sinwar, said that the Israeli military would continue fighting with, quote, full force, Tom.
Hallie, you and your team do courageous and exceptional work every day on both sides of this conflict. Thank you very much. Hallie in Tel Aviv. NBC covers hundreds of stories each day, and because it's tough to read, watch, or listen to everything, our bureau teams have selected some highlights. So this is what they tell us is going down in the regions, and we call this the local. From our Northeast Bureau, jury selection starts today in the trial of a former Marine accused of choking a man to death on a New York City subway. Disturbing video of the incident shows Daniel Penny, who is white, putting Jordan Neely, a black man, into a chokehold after a scuffle on a subway car. Penny has pleaded not guilty to charges of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. Also from our Northeast Bureau, police say one person was seriously injured after this hit and run in Philadelphia. The black truck you see right there ran a red light and hit another driver along with several empty parked cars. The passengers in the truck were all able to get out, some running away and others hopping into a getaway car. Police are still searching for the suspects. From our Western Bureau, a car repossession turned into an accidental kidnapping in Colorado after the tow truck driver took a car with a child inside. The 11-year-old's parents had let him rest in the parking lot while they finished their laundry in the hotel. He didn't wake up during the whole ride to the yard. The tow truck driver didn't notice the child was in the car. Thankfully, police reunited the boy with his parents. Still to come from us, is it really legal for Elon Musk to give away $1 million a day for signing up for his pro-Trump PAC? Okay, a lot of questions today about Elon Musk offering $1 million every day to someone who signs his petition supporting free speech and the right to own a gun. Take a listen.
Every day from now until the election, we're giving out $1 million prize. And all you have to do is sign a petition in support of the Constitution. It's very straightforward. You don't even have to vote. You don't have to vote. You just have to sign a petition saying you believe in the Constitution.
As you know, Musk is supporting President Trump. Musk gave out his first $2 million at town halls in Pennsylvania over the weekend. And we have video of one woman receiving her very big check. Musk has become, as you know, one of the former president's most high-profile supporters and biggest donors, showing up to rally for Trump and posting about his support on his social media platform, X. So a lot of folks are asking, how is this all possible? NBC's legal analyst, Danny Savalos, joins us. Danny, let's cut right to it. Is this legal?
I'm going to give you a hard answer here, maybe. And I say that because, on the one hand, I'll play defense attorney. If he were ever prosecuted for this, the federal law prohibits giving anyone something of value to either induce them to register, because forget voting. Elon already said, I don't care if you vote or not. But federal law also prohibits paying someone to register to vote. And that includes either paying them to go register or rewarding them after they have registered. Now, you notice Elon didn't say anything about registration, but my understanding is that they must be registered voters in order to sign the petition. So the question becomes, is this an inducement or a reward for registration, even though Elon Musk didn't say so out loud? It's only implicit. So as a defense attorney, I would argue if this came to trial that his intent was explicit. It had nothing to do with the registration. But then the prosecution would have a pretty good argument, too, which is, hey, only people who are registered are allowed to sign the petition. So the inducement, the intent here is inherent.
Yeah, I mean, if he wins the election, clearly they're not going to go after him. Listen, he's also said that if he's elected, he would put Musk in charge of a new government efficiency commission with the power to recommend changes to federal rules and make cuts at federal agencies. And that seems like a quid pro quo right there, right? So is it, or is it just politics as usual and big donors get big jobs?
This is much less problematic than the giant foam check being given to people for signing a petition because, as you just said, it's something that happens fairly often. I mean, the people who end up in the cabinet or even all the way down to ambassadors, are they a part of a nationwide search for the best person for the job? Maybe. Sometimes they're people who just happen to have $1 million that happen to go towards a good cause, meaning a campaign. I don't know. But the bottom line is this seems much less likely to be something the federal government or state authorities would be interested in, even if it is a quid pro quo. Though they're going to be far more interested in this showy display of paying people essentially to sign a petition and possibly also to register.
So the answer is it depends.
With all legal things, Tom, it is often it depends. I have to hedge.
Thank you, Counselor. That was worth the money. Danny Savalos, thank you very much. Coming up next, some cities have earned the reputation of being a so-called climate haven. Why disasters in places like Asheville are proving climate havens may not actually exist. So as extreme weather becomes more frequent, some towns that were once considered climate havens, more safe from things like wildfires, hurricanes, and flooding, they're now getting hit with devastating disasters, like Asheville, North Carolina, where residents are still cleaning up after the devastation from Hurricane Hallie. We checked back in with our own Hallie Jackson. She first talked to these folks 3 years ago. She moved to Asheville to escape extreme weather, and here's Hallie with more.
To Melissa Booth, Asheville may never look the same.
It's gone. I mean, it's completely gone. This is where I enjoyed so many hours of relaxing and enjoying the river.
Her favorite hangouts destroyed by the flooding after Hurricane Helene. And it's along this river where we first met Booth and her husband 3 years ago after they'd moved here from coastal Georgia.
Was climate change the only reason that you decided to move?
I would say it was the biggest reason.
Asheville had earned a reputation as a so-called climate haven, along with places like Duluth and Buffalo. Not immune to climate change impacts, but maybe more resilient, which came up in our conversation with Booth, a climate scientist.
There's also no hurricanes, no big tornadoes, no violent weather patterns.
Today,
the best data showed that it was insulated from intense hurricanes, from severe droughts. After having lived through this flooding, I realized that I was wrong to think that Asheville is a climate haven or that there is a such thing as a climate haven.
More than 90% of counties in the U.S. have had at least one disaster claim filed. And over the next 30 years, some estimates predict 7.5 million Americans could move because of climate risk.
When they think about buying a home, they think about where to live in a way they just didn't 20 years ago.
Experts say it's not about zero risk, just how much and what kind. From wildfires out west to extreme rain and snowfall near the Great Lakes to, yes, inland flooding in places like North Carolina.
We need to have strong plans for when this happens again, because it will. It's going to happen to every community across the U.S.
But Booth has no plans to move again.
In natural systems, resilience is the ability to bounce back. And that's what I want Asheville and all communities around the planet to have, the ability to bounce back. And I want to be part of that solution.
Hallie Jackson, NBC News.
And our thanks to Hallie for that report. That's a wrap for this hour. Our coverage resumes right now on News Now. Top of the hour, a lot happening here on NBC News Now. We are starting with new video just into us in the last hour. The new explosions our team captured on camera in Lebanon. Strikes by Israel this evening with new concern from the Biden administration that the situation in the region is out of control. Their words, we are live in Beirut. Also, the desperate search for survivors in New Mexico with deadly flooding killing at least 2 people there. The new fears that more rain is on the way this evening. And plus, we're going to go live to the campaign trail. A look at how the hurricane is impacting early voting in Florida as Vice President Kamala Harris stands side by side with the top Republican in the Midwest. And then the wild video we're getting out of Texas this evening when a helicopter smashed into a radio tower. Big questions about the investigation that is just now underway. And the new way stores are trying to predict how much Americans will spend this holiday season. How much will you spend? And why there's an election and a climate connection. There's always an election connection. That's later in the show. Good day, I'm Tom Costello in for Hallie, who is on assignment. And we begin with breaking news out of the Middle East. New explosive Israeli strikes happening right now in Beirut. Take a look at this smoke filling the sky over Lebanon's highly populated capital. Israel sending out evacuation orders in that area where it is just now after 1 a.m. Israel claims a Hezbollah command center is hidden underneath a hospital where they are launching these new strikes. We want to go right now to Matt Bradley, who was in Lebanon for us. And Matt, you saw this moment when the strikes happened. It was captured on your team's camera. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, Tom, well, we don't know exactly what the Israelis were hitting, but we know that they've struck 3 or the areas around 3 major hospitals here in all of Lebanon. 2 of them were here in Beirut. Just behind me now, these were Al-Hariri Hospital was one of the big ones. This is, these are medical institutions, and we just heard from Lebanese authorities protesting against the fact that these are now somehow in the crosshairs of Israeli assaults. Now, in the past day or 2, we've seen the Israelis kind of turn their targets towards financial institutions. Last night, they said that they were targeting basically commercial banks. And these are Islamic banks. They give Islamic loans, which means without interest, to ordinary depositors. But the Israelis had said that these banks were being used by the Iranians as a front for Iranian financing for Hezbollah operations here in Lebanon and further afield. So they targeted them throughout the country. And that's why we saw blanket attacks, not just here in Beirut, but also in the Bekaa Valley and in southern Lebanon. And tonight, we're seeing another round of attacks. This comes a couple of hours after the Israelis said that there was a huge store of money by Hezbollah that was being stored underground in a bunker. They said that the entrance to the bunker was near a hospital. We're not sure, of course, if this was the attack that the Israelis had been warning about, but this was another explosive night in just a string, a month-long explosive nights.
Hey, Matt, you and I have talked about how beyond Hezbollah, Lebanon is in a very precarious situation. Its population, very vulnerable, very precarious. What are those people doing right now? And what's it feel like on the ground, right? You've been there for quite a while.
Yeah, well, we're seeing really a humanitarian catastrophe, and I've been here for the past year on and off. There's now more than 1.3 million people who have been displaced, and this is just in the past month. So that's a really very fast-moving humanitarian situation where people are moving from the south in huge numbers. They emptied out this neighborhood of Dahia behind me where Hezbollah had made its headquarters and where it's a residential area where there were a lot of people. So we're seeing them dispersed onto the streets of Beirut, where some of them are able to find shelter, but very many of them are just sleeping rough on the streets. Aid agencies have complained that they don't have adequate resources, and part of the reason why, of course, is because this has been such a fast-moving crisis. The Israeli bombardments have displaced so many people in such a short amount of time, it's hard for aid agencies to keep up, and that is on top of the fact that there is almost no government presence here. The government is almost entirely absent. There's been a financial crisis here for the past 5 years that has already devastated the economy. And then 10 years ago, there was another refugee crisis from neighboring Syria that this country has struggled to deal with. So it's just one thing after another here in Lebanon.
I don't have a lot of time, Matt, but I think our viewers often ask this question. Where does somebody like Matt Bradley put his head down at night? Where does your crew put your head down? Not asking for the address, don't tell me what town or anything else, but do you find hotels that are open, or do you stay with contacts and friends and relatives in the area?
Well, we're in our hotel right now. I mean, this is where we are, and this is a public place. This is where quite a few of our colleagues in the international media are staying. You know, we feel as though we're safe in these places. We feel as though we're not doing anything like hiding around amongst the city. You know, we've raised our flag very high, and we feel very safe and very protected here. But for the rest of the people of Beirut, for the rest of the people of Lebanon, and I stress this, there is no safe place to go.
Yeah. Thank you to you and your crew. Matt Bradley. All right, now to the campaign trail back here at home, where early voting begins in part of Florida, a state that just weeks ago looked a lot like this. In fact, it still does, right? The historic hurricanes Hallie and Milton have just ravaged much of the entire Gulf Coast. And there are big questions about how the storms might impact the election. Already, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is changing some election rules to relieve some of the stress for people directly in the storm's path. And former President Trump spreading misinformation about FEMA's response to the storms. He visited parts of North Carolina devastated by flooding from Hallie. He was there today. He told our Von Hilliard he has no reason to believe the storm will impact the outcome of the state.
Is there any concern or specific reasoning that you have to believe at this point in time, 3 weeks in, that the results of the election in North Carolina will not be credible or legitimate because of the storm's aftermath?
No, I think in a way it's the opposite. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. But the fact that they'd come out and vote in record numbers is pretty amazing to me.
So again, Florida is one of 8 states where early voting is beginning, and that's where we find NBC's Jesse Kirsch. He's actually down in Miami. Jesse, how is Florida helping voters who have been impacted by the storm? And you're right, most of them up and down the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, so, Tom, officials have made a request to the governor who signed an executive order creating some flexibility in the way that voting is going to proceed this fall. A couple key things that I think people are very familiar with, which are going to be a little bit different, flexed a little bit differently. Mail-in balloting, that process has some changes built into it to create, to alleviate some of the stressors. Additionally, the governor also is making it easier for counties to adapt where physical voting locations will be, where the polling sites will be on Election Day. Because, of course, if you have, let's say, a community center or a school that may have had damage because of a hurricane, well, you probably aren't going to want to have people voting there. So this is giving officials at the county level more time, more flexibility in figuring out where they're going to be putting those polling locations. Because, of course, also repairs, getting power back on, rebuilding things, cleaning up, that is a fluid situation, right? So that's not something that you might know at this point what you're going to need in a couple weeks.
Abortion, of course, has been a hot issue throughout the entire country, but there in Florida, voters are being asked to decide whether to uphold the state's 6-week abortion ban. Is that top of mind for people you're speaking with, or has that been eclipsed by the hurricane and everything else?
Yeah, so this is one of 10 states that has a ballot measure about abortion that voters are going to be speaking on this fall. There is a 6-week abortion ban in effect in this state right now, and what this vote is about is enshrining expanded access to abortion beyond that 6-week span. So it's not directly overturning that 6-week ban, but it would effectively wipe it out. I spoke with voters today, including one man who said that was an issue that he thought a lot about. Here's part of my exchange with that voter. Why was that something that's top of mind for you?
I believe, you know, even though I can say it, I'm Catholic, I don't like abortions, but I don't believe they have the right to tell you what to do and not to do. It's about a right issue, not the abortion issue.
And you heard that gentleman speak of himself as a Catholic as part of his thinking around this issue, Tom. Spoke with a voter who said she was voting up and down Republican on her ballot, and she also cited being Catholic as a reason for why she was not voting in support or was voting against this abortion access amendment, Tom. So, you know, any way you slice it, a lot of different opinions out there, a lot of people voting today, and this is just the beginning of early voting here.
Okay. Jesse, thank you very much. Vice President Harris sticking to battleground Midwest states for now. You see her wrapping up a convention with, make that a conversation with Liz Cheney in Michigan in the last hour. all part of this whole country over party theme that she's been working to win women and Trump skeptic Republicans like former Congresswoman Cheney. It's one of 3 counties that she's hitting in areas you might call Hallie country. And we've talked about this, right? Places with a high concentration of Nikki Haley voters in the 2024 primary. And then Harris will go to Wisconsin next after again slamming Trump in Pennsylvania in just the last few hours. Take a listen.
There are things that he says that will be the subject of skits and laughter and jokes. But words have meaning coming from someone who aspires to stand behind the seal of the President of the United States.
As we're getting new details on the Harris campaign's dual track strategy to show Mr. Trump as much as possible and avoid being seen with President Biden. That reporting now coming from NBC's Yamiche Alcindor. She's in Chester County, Pennsylvania, where Ms. Harris spoke. And Yamiche joins me now. Yamiche, how is the VP using that message in Pennsylvania near you?
Well, she's really trying to lean in on this idea that Donald Trump is unfit for the office of presidency and a threat to democracy. What was interesting, though, is that just behind me, she had this intimate conversation with Liz Cheney. Of course, it was a small setting, not the big sort of raucous campaign rallies. And she was asked specifically about how she would sort of turn the page to this next generation of leaderships, something that she talks about a lot when she is asked about sort of how she might differentiate herself from the president. So take a listen to what she told this crowd here in Chester County, Pennsylvania.
Mine will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring to it my own ideas, my own experiences. But it is also about moving past what, frankly, I think has been the last decade of the American discourse being influenced by Donald Trump.
So Harris is saying that she's just not going to be another term of Biden. And part of the things that she's saying she's going to do differently is she's going to have a Republican, she says, in her cabinet. She also was talking about the fact that she might have some different policies when it comes to the economy, when it comes to specifically housing and what she calls the sandwich generation, people who are both taking care of their children but also taking care of their parents. Sources I've been talking to also say that she's going to get a little bit more pointed when it comes to this because she really wants to make sure that voters have specifics on her plans, because that's a big question, especially for undecided and independent voters, what exactly she'll be doing if she becomes a President Harris, Tom.
Okay, Yamiche, thank you very much. Don't miss tomorrow night. Our very own Hallie Jackson will sit down with the Vice President for her first interview, one-on-one with Vice President Harris. That'll be tomorrow, NBC Nightly News at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Taking you out west now, where there's a state of emergency in New Mexico, and the search is on for survivors of the deadly flooding deluging the Roswell area in southeast New Mexico. The National Guard tells us 2 people are dead and dozens more are hospitalized. But hundreds have been rescued. Take a look there. Emergency crews saving the folks stuck on a roof of a convention center, just trying to get to higher ground as the floodwaters were rising. Another rescue team pulled a dog to safety from the threatening floods. There you go. This area of New Mexico has been swamped with something like 4 months of rain in just a few hours. Literally, cars have been floating along with their headlights on, trapped on roads and in parking lots. All roads leading into and out of Roswell have been shut down for a while. Meteorologists are also saying that it might not yet be over. More rain and flash floods could be on the way, with tornadoes also possible. The record-setting weather events appear linked to our changing climate and happening in a region that's already struggled, as you know, with devastating wildfires this year. NBC's Guad Venegas is in Roswell, New Mexico for us. Guad, how bad is the situation where you are at this hour?
Tom, well, the water has receded in parts of Roswell where we saw some of that deadly flooding. You can see behind me some of the destruction left behind. Items that were in this home. There's a washer and parts of the structure that collapsed. We're just a couple feet away from a river. This is one of the rivers that overflowed. You can see the damage. There's a pickup truck inside of that garage. And again, this is one of the structures that's very close to a river that overflooded. The residents here tell me that they saw the water rise 5 feet in the street, much of that water going into their homes. A lot of the individuals here escaped and helped others evacuate their homes as those waters were coming up when they got that heavy rainfall. Let's hear from one of the residents just down the street talking to me about what it was like when he woke up that night.
When we initially woke up, it was, it was an inch or two, and then, like I said, within minutes, it was mid-shin and just only going higher.
Oh, it's all covered in mud.
That's all done for. The water was flowing, it was flowing north, kind of northeast, like a river. I mean, even...
All of this?
Yeah, so, I mean, I couldn't even get to my truck because of how strong it was coming up the roads.
And today a lot of these residents, Tom, waking up to just inches of mud inside their homes, or even here where I'm standing. This is a backyard, but everywhere we walk, there's just mud. Kind of difficult to get around. And I mean, I'm going to show you a fence over on this side that was swept away by the current. This is one of the fences that was over there. And all of these properties have fences that were either torn down or washed up, swept away from other properties. And earlier you showed a clip of the sheriff, the county sheriff, that also got stuck in the flood water. Let's hear some more from the sheriff.
That is the side of my truck. And there are multiple vehicles that came into this not expecting that much water. And before I know it, I was swept off into this.
No one expected this much water that fast. I mean, this is record-setting rainfall. It was almost 6 inches. It broke the record that was set over 100 years ago, Tom.
I know that area pretty well. It does not have the infrastructure, the equipment to respond to something like this, right? It's not Albuquerque. It's not El Paso.
Well, that's why the state has come together. You've got the state police helping out. So you also have the National Guard, of course, local agencies helping each other out, and a lot of neighbors that have also done what they can to help with the cleanup efforts. So, yes, this is about 3 hours away from Albuquerque, east in the eastern part of New Mexico. It's a town known for the alien theme iconography here, right? So there's a conspiracy theory that people used to say that a UFO had landed here. So there's a lot of tourism that comes into this town because of that. But of course, now it is the spotlight because of the heavy rainfall and these flash floods that, as you mentioned earlier, have been deadly, Tom.
Yeah. All right, Guad. Thank you very much. Guad Venegas, who's in the region for us. In Georgia, investigators are trying to determine what caused an aluminum gangway to collapse, forcing 20 people into the water, killing 7. And you can see right there the gangway being taken away from the dock to a secure facility where it will be examined for any clues as to what might have caused the collapse. It comes as we are now learning the names of the victims, all senior citizens ranging in age from 73 to 93. All 7 were visitors to the Sapelo Island that's off the coast of Georgia. About 700 people had gathered to celebrate the Gula Geechee history and its blend of African culture and American life. Priya Sridhar is joining us now. Priya, what are investigators looking at now, and what are we learning about the victims and this community?
Hey, Tom. Yeah, so the gangway that all of these people were standing on looks very much like the one you see behind me here, and it was actually pretty recently built back in 2021. The Georgia Department of Natural Resources is the one that's leading this investigation to figure out exactly what happened that caused this accident. The one they're saying that did not happen is they do not believe that a boat hit the dock. Now, they're trying to figure out if perhaps there were too many people standing on it. They believe there was somewhere between 20 and 40 people standing on it when it collapsed. Now, Sapelo Island is only accessible by ferry. Everyone has to come here to Meridian, Georgia to get on a ferry and go over to the island, which only actually has about 35 year-round residents there. But as you mentioned, there were actually around 700 people on the island over the weekend. Typically, only every day the ferry runs, only about 100 people go over there. So that's another thing that investigators will be looking into, if perhaps that overcapacity could have had some sort of impact into what caused this accident. But as you mentioned, the 7 victims who tragically died are all senior citizens. And one of the the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus here in Georgia actually spoke just a few moments ago about answers that he's hoping to get out of this investigation. Let's take a listen.
When there's an emergency in Sapelo, what do? What's the plan? There are resources that surpass just counseling. What financial resources are available? what communications are available? What are we going to do to maintain that this will never happen again?
So Georgia lawmakers are actually on the island right now trying to get answers as to what could have happened here, Tom.
All right, Priya, thank you very much. A highly anticipated legislative hearing today is moving forward without its star witness, a death row inmate who was supposed to be executed in a controversial shaken baby case. As we're now just hearing from a juror in the original case, she says they got the conviction wrong. Robert Robertson was set to testify before Texas lawmakers today about his case after his execution was postponed last week due to an unexpectedly successful last-ditch effort to buy him some time. But there was some back and forth between lawmakers and the state's attorney general about how Robertson would get to testify in person or remotely. The big question now, what happens next with Robert Robertson? He still could be executed, but lawmakers tell our Lester Holt Robertson deserves a chance.
How much time do you think you have bought Robertson?
Well, the statutes in Texas are clear. When he was not executed last week, as they intended to, it starts the clock all over again. And at a minimum, Robert deserves a new trial.
With Robert Robertson's case, there are just way too many questions, way too many concerns for us to stay silent on this.
You may recall it was back in 2003 that a jury convicted him of killing his 2-year-old daughter, Nikki, based on a shaken baby syndrome diagnosis that his lawyers and medical experts say is now kind of outdated and questionable. But the state is standing by its conviction. NBC's Priscilla Thompson is joining me now from Austin. Priscilla, there were several witnesses that did end up testifying at today's hearing. Were they all of that mind that this was a mistake to have ever convicted him?
Every single one of them, Tom. We heard from that juror who said that if she had heard this medical evidence about baby Nikki's long-term chronic health issues, that she would have voted differently on that guilty versus not guilty. We also heard from Dr. Phil, who walked through this shaken baby syndrome, which the medical consensus has now changed around how those symptoms can be caused, and all of them saying that they believe Robertson is innocent. Take a listen to what Dr. Phil said earlier.
This man has not had due process. This man has not had a fair trial. And if we start executing people in Texas absent due process, absent fair trial, we are going down a really dangerous road. That is not something that I can support.
And as you mentioned, notably, we did not hear from Robertson himself. He was supposed to be the headliner today, but his attorneys and the Department of Criminal Justice are at a standstill over whether he will be able to appear in person or virtually. Tom?
Well, he may get to testify eventually, but that doesn't mean the case is being reopened, right? So what are his options?
No, but the crucial thing here is that Texas lawmakers have bought him time because he has to get at least 90 days notice of a new execution date, which would put it in 2025. And here's what the judge, the former criminal appeals judge testifying now, said. There are 3 judges on the Court of Appeals who are not going to be reelected. They lost their primary, which means in January there are going to be 3 new judges on that court. And so they are hoping if they can hold out until then, they only need one of those judges to vote with the others to agree to stay this execution and re-examine this case. The other option she mentioned is that the district attorney in Palestine, Texas, because of this increased public pressure, could decide not to set a new execution date. As we know, his date expired last Thursday night, and it has not been reset as of yet. So a couple of options here, but really the crucial thing is that these lawmakers have bought them time, at least 90 days. Tom?
Well, it sounds like he's got a really universal support here. We'll watch it closely. Priscilla, thank you very much. Other news, media giant Disney is today moving towards a future without longtime leader Bob Iger. The board, though, is really dragging its feet here. The company has announced it will name his successor sometime in 2026. That's a full year later than they had initially planned. Disney says the move gives it more time to vet candidates to lead the $175 billion company, but the delay also means Iger's second stint in the top job will last at least another year. You'll recall Iger led Disney for 15 years before stepping down back in 2020, only to retake the CEO role after his first handpicked successor was fired in 2022. Iger has pushed his retirement back 5 times to stay in the job. Let's go now to CNBC's Alex Sherman. Alex, what does this succession plan really say about the company's attitude towards Iger and Disney's future? It's almost like he's irreplaceable.
Yeah, look, the Disney board has long thought Bob Iger is irreplaceable. You referenced it. He's pushed back his retirement 5 different times. What does that say? It says that the company really wants this guy to stick around. And you also referenced that his contract as CEO doesn't actually end until December 31st, 2026. So already he was going to be around. The change here is that initially Disney was thinking about announcing someone in 2025 and then having that person more or less be groomed by Bob Iger, who would still be the CEO, but at least the heir apparent would be named. Now pushing it to 2026, I think to your question, you could read this in a couple different ways. One, it does cement the fact that Iger will at least be sticking around. He's not going to be moving up his retirement, you wouldn't think. But the person who's stepping down as the chairman, Mark Parker, was very close to Bob Iger. And so he'll be replaced by James Gorman, who doesn't have that same close relationship. So maybe Iger loses a little bit of his influence.
You know, he has also, or at least Disney, has alienated some Disney families because they keep raising the price of Disney Plus, right? And then in addition, this whole lawsuit, you may recall over the summer, in which a woman who somebody in her family had died at Disney World, and then Disney said, you can't sue us, it's got to go to arbitration because you are a Disney Plus subscriber. There's a clause saying any lawsuit against Disney must go to arbitration, even if you die at the park. I mean, that seemed a little bit crazy.
So this issue of prices going up in terms of that irritating various different customers, look, that has been an issue for years at Disney. I mean, it was an issue when Bob Chapek was the CEO, when Iger stepped away. It was an issue when Bob Iger was the CEO the first time. The fact of the matter is this company is sort of a cash machine when it comes to both the parks and the media entities. So if you don't think Disney Plus's price is going to continue to go up and up and up, you don't understand the media industry. That is only going to go in one direction in the coming years. And by the way, ESPN, which is owned by Disney, is going to launch its own streaming service in 2025, and that's going to be priced high too.
Yeah, and just for the record, they got so much pushback on that whole lawsuit thing, they essentially allowed the lawsuit to continue. They bowed out on that arbitration clause. They're always interesting to watch. Alex Sherman, thank you very much. Coming up from us, the NTSB is scheduled to give a briefing on that deadly helicopter crash in Texas. We're going to have the live report coming up. Bottom of the hour. Later in the Global, why one New Zealand airport is capping its hug time outside its terminal. But first from us, we may not even be done with October yet, but guess what? Retailers are already trying to predict just how much we're all going to spend this holiday season. CNBC says there are going to be 4 big factors that really shape shopping habits this season. First, the election and the news cycle that comes with it. Are people anxious? And then hurricane damage and unseasonably warm temperatures, 80 degrees today in D.C. Plus, there's the fact that the holiday rush might be on overtime. There's less time this year between Thanksgiving and Christmas than there was last year. And finally, people may actually be starting their shopping earlier than usual to find better deals and stretch the budget. CNBC's Melissa Repko is here to break it all down for us. Melissa, a former Target exec, is really emphasizing that the election and the high prices could be the big factor this season, right? So what are the experts you're talking to saying?
Tom, we're hearing from retailers and a lot of retail experts that people are still very price conscious. They're being selective about their purchases. And even though inflation has cooled, the reality is prices haven't gone down. So people are still feeling that pressure to stretch their dollars, and they're being more deal hunting in their mentality as we go into the holiday season.
There's some concern, I understand, for some optimism for retailers, though, right? I mean, inflation is down. It's going down. We just got a consumer spending report back from the Commerce Department that retail sales were actually up in September.
That's right, Tom. The average shopper expects to spend just shy of $1,800, according to Deloitte's survey, and that would be up about 8% compared to a year ago. But interestingly, people plan to spend more on decorations and they plan to spend more on experiences, but it's about flat when it comes to gifts. So retailers may have to work a little harder to get people to fill up their baskets with gifts this year. And again, that deal hunting mentality will be top of mind. So people are going to be looking for events like Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And that's why you saw a lot of those deals start early in October.
I'm not kidding you. I just said to my wife this morning, I said, should we be thinking about gifts already for Christmas? I mean, the timing. Yeah, you're right. People are talking about it anyway. All right, Melissa, thank you very much. Good info. And let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you might want to know about tonight. Number 1, Sean Diddy Combs now facing 5 new civil lawsuits accusing him of rape and sexual assault. The new claims come from 2 men and 3 women, some accusing Combs of drugging them. One woman says the abuse happened when she was 13 years old, that according to the suit. Combs being held without bail on federal racketeering and sex trafficking charges. His team has not responded to NBC's request for comment. Number 2, a popular tourist site in New York City reopening today with new safety features. You may know it. It's called The Vessel. This tower closed 3 years ago after several suicides, but now the structure has mesh barriers to keep visitors safe without blocking the view. The top floors of The Vessel will be off limits, though, for visitors. Number 3, dozens of frozen waffle brands are under recall because of possible listeria contamination. The FDA says the products were sold at stores including Walmart and Target, and brands like Kodiak and Good & Gather. The company Treehouse Foods is urging customers to toss out the products and contact it for credit. So far, no reports of anybody getting sick. Number 4, Michigan State Police have rescued a dog named Sophie, a German Shepherd, trapped in a hole 5 to 6 feet down. They say the owner was walking Sophie when she fell down the gas line hole. Police shared the video showing a state trooper using some type of rope to pull her to safety, and we're all grateful. Number 5, the WNBA Players Association says it will opt out of its current bargaining agreement with the league a day after the New York Liberty won the finals. And that means if the players don't reach a deal with the league by the end of next season, they could face a work stoppage. The union wants better salaries, family planning, child care, and retirement benefits. In the last couple of hours, the WNBA says it will work with the Players Association on a new agreement that, in its words, is fair for all. Now to our original in-depth reporting on a topic we watch closely here. We're taking you back to the Middle East, where there was just these new explosives in Beirut, Israeli strikes. The fighting is also raging inside Gaza, as you know, with a human rights group saying that in Israel there are alarming signs that the Israeli military is beginning to quietly implement the general's plan. Now, that's a dramatic strategy to force anybody left in the north to evacuate, to surrender, or starve. Here's Hallie.
For the residents of northern Gaza, this is what hell on earth looks like. Since the start of October, little to no food has gone in, and IDF airstrikes have killed hundreds, according to the Gazan Civil Defense. The conditions on the ground leading some to believe Israel is already implementing a radical strategy known as the General's Plan, forcing the evacuation of every resident in the north, anyone left considered a combatant, a military target, deprived of food, water, and medicine, starve or surrender. A plan proposed by this man to the Israeli parliament in September, former National Security Council head Giora Eiland. We caught up with him in his office near Tel Aviv, where he claims his strategy comes from the U.S. Department of Defense.
If you manage to evacuate civilians, it is allowed and even recommended to cause a siege and to bring the people who are there to die in starvation. This is what is written according to the Marian Manual.
This DoD law of war manual, in fact, calls a siege permissible rather than recommended. But this former general, who says he still receives official intelligence briefings, says his plan is not being implemented because it is not a full siege, and civilians, he says, are still in the way. If you tell 300,000 people, basically, at the end of the barrel of a gun, you leave or we kill you or we starve you, how is that?
No. We tell them to leave to a safe area, which is the area of Muasi, along the coast.
That has been repeatedly bombed by
Not at all. Not at all.
It has been. I've actually done stories on it and geolocated strikes in Muasi after people were told to evacuate.
Sometimes when the terrorists happen to be there, it is a relatively safe place.
The IDF denies implementing the general's plan, but 27 members of parliament and ministers, some from Benjamin Netanyahu's own party, publicly support it. Several times since the beginning of October, Israeli authorities have posted evacuation orders online and dropped leaflets over areas like Jabalia and Beit Lahia. In the last year, many have been forced to leave the north, but 400,000 people remain there, told to go. Some won't, and some can't. But the Major General says
there is no way that you cannot evacuate people, even elderly people or people who cannot walk or people who are wounded or whatever. This is all nonsense.
For veteran Palestinian politician Mustafa Barghouti, this plan is already a reality.
I think now everybody sees that the so-called general's plan is being implemented. A plan to starve the people in the north of Gaza, to bombard them continuously, to kill so many of them, to force them to leave Gaza, to leave the north of Gaza. It is a plan to ethnically cleanse the whole north of Gaza.
To what end? Do you think it's eventually to annex parts of the Gaza Strip?
Absolutely.
On the ground, emergency services tell our teams in Gaza these areas are almost entirely sealed off to rescue workers already. An IDF spokesperson posting this photo, claiming these residents of Jabalia are leaving willingly. But the exhaustion of those forced to flee once again is etched on the faces of the displaced. There is no place for me to stay, this woman says. We lived through hard times. It is enough. While others say they would rather stay than venture into the unknown. If I have my 5 daughters with me, I want to stay in my house and die with dignity, this man says. For Major General Aylan, this is simply what happens in war.
So it is probably the most common military act, and this is to conquer land from your enemy. So I'm speaking about conquering this area for purely military reasons.
Whether it's the exact general's plan or some version of it, for the civilians of northern Gaza, it matters little. The forced displacement and bloodshed and hunger are already their daily reality.
Hallie Garani is in Tel Aviv. To underscore what you said on the report, NBC has our own teams on the ground in Gaza doing our own reporting and our own fact-checking on what's happening there. What more do we know, by the way, about where the U.S. stands on Israel's ongoing operations there in Gaza, especially after Israel killed the top Hamas commander?
Yeah, and it's important to underscore that all the material practically that you saw in that piece was filmed by our NBC teams inside of Gaza. As far as U.S. Pressure, you might remember last week that there was a letter sent to Israeli authorities, co-signed by the Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, asking that Israel improve humanitarian conditions and noting particularly the dire situation in the northern part of the Gaza Strip outlined in our report. They gave Israel 30 days or possibly face consequences. Those consequences could include a limit on the sale and the transfer of arms. And this is coming as Antony Blinken is in Israel once again. It's his 11th trip since October 7th. There is little optimism, though, it has to be said, across the region for a ceasefire. The Israeli Prime Minister himself, after the death of Sinwar, said that the Israeli military would continue fighting with, quote, full force, Tom.
Hallie, you and your team do courageous and exceptional work every day on both sides of this conflict. Thank you very much. Hallie Garani in Tel Aviv. Still ahead from us, the NTSB just gave a big update on that tragic helicopter crash in Houston. We'll tell you what the NTSB is saying about this moment. You're seeing it right here. We're coming back. Back now with our breaking news. The NTSB just wrapping up an update on the crash, I should say, the helicopter crash in Houston. Remember, a chopper slammed into a radio tower last night. That moment captured on a security camera. And here you see the fiery wreckage crashing to the ground, taking the tower down with it. Thankfully, nobody on the ground was injured, but 4 people in the crash. One of those victims was a child, and they all perished. NBC's Stephen Romo joins me now. Stephen, what were the headlines from the NTSB?
Yeah, Tom, we got that update from the NTSB, and really what struck me most is how much is still left unsaid, how many more questions remain right now. The NTSB saying the FAA is involved in this investigation as well. The NTSB is leading that. Right now, they're asking people to provide them with more information. They're asking for witnesses in the area to send witness statements to a specific email address they gave out, along with surveillance videos, something we've already been able to show some of the situation there. We're also hearing that the NTSB is not able to tell us anything about the lighting on the tower, something that's been focused on quite a lot. Just that situation right now also not available there. As far as the names of the victims, they're telling us that Houston police will release that information. Houston police have told us that the Harris County Medical Examiner will be the one to release that information. So there's still a lot more to go right now. Yeah. They're still trying to wrap up that scene. It's just massive. Yeah. 200 yards of a fire here, and all these roads around that area still closed right now, Tom.
Yeah, amazingly, I mean, they had amazing luck because it was very close to a residential area. The tower came down, didn't touch any homes, and it was right behind a fire station. And the fire station was immediately out the door and responding. To your point about the lights, that we talked to the FAA confirms that there was this notice that went out to pilots saying that, in fact, some of the lights on the tower were defective, that those are lights, by the way, that pilots need to see so they know to avoid the tower. But it does appear at least one light on the tower was functioning. And Stephen, as you've covered these things over the years, you and I have talked before, it takes a long time for the NTSB to come up with a final conclusion about what caused this crash.
Certainly does. They are slow and methodical in their process. They already are mentioning just how meticulous they plan to be in this situation before they're able to actually give any type of resolution to what caused this. That's what so many people are asking. What caused this to happen? It's such a busy area just on the east side of downtown. There are so many homes and buildings in that area. It is not some isolated farm field somewhere. So people very much want to know how this happened and how they can prevent it from happening again. There are a lot of radio towers in that area, Tom.
There are. By the way, there was a medevac crash in Kentucky earlier this month. 3 people died. Same thing. It crashed into some radio guide wires. Stephen, thank you very much. Stephen Romo, New York. NBC covers hundreds of international stories every day. And you know it's tough to read, watch, or listen to everything. So our teams around the world have selected some highlights. And here's a look at what they're watching. And we call this the Global. Out of Cuba, millions of people are going on days now without power. You know, the country's energy grid went down when one of their major power plants failed. It comes as Hurricane Oscar is bringing heavy rains to that island. Cuba's government says it will not tolerate any disturbances after some people protested about the outage over the last 24 hours. In Australia, an Indigenous senator was heckling King Charles today during his parliamentary speech. It was his first overseas visit since his cancer diagnosis. The lawmaker shouted, "You're not my king," and accused the monarchy of committing genocide against Aboriginal people during British rule over Australia. Security escorted her out. The king did not respond to the comments at the event. And out of New Zealand, take a look at these new signs at an international airport telling loved ones, please limit your goodbyes to 3 minutes. Can you imagine? That's right, they're capping hug times. The airport's CEO says the signs are meant to keep the terminal traffic flowing. And guess who wants to have a longer goodbye? They can head to the parking lot where they can get a whopping 15 minutes. Is that enough time for you, Bert? No. Bert's shaking his head. It's not enough time. Still to come, Elon Musk wants to give away millions of dollars to people signing up for his pro-Trump PAC. Millions of dollars to voters. We'll break down if that's even legal. Okay, a lot of questions today about Elon Musk offering $1 million every day to someone who signs his petition supporting free speech and the right to own a gun. Take a listen.
Every day from now until the election, we're giving out $1 million prize. And all you have to do is sign a petition in support of the Constitution. It's very straightforward. You don't even have to vote. You don't have to vote. You just have to sign a petition saying you believe in the Constitution.
As you know, Musk is supporting President Trump. Musk gave out his first $2 million at town halls in Pennsylvania over the weekend. And we have video of one woman receiving her very big check. Musk has become, as you know, one of the former president's most high-profile supporters and biggest donors, showing up to rally for Trump and posting about his support on his social media platform X. So a lot of folks are asking, how is this all possible? NBC's legal analyst Danny Savalos joins us. Danny, let's cut right to it. Is this legal?
I'm going to give you a hard answer here, maybe. And I say that because, on the one hand, I'll play defense attorney. If he were ever prosecuted for this, the federal law prohibits giving anyone something of value to either induce them to register, because forget voting. Elon already said, I don't care if you vote or not. But federal law also prohibits paying someone to register to vote, and that includes either paying them to go register or rewarding them after they have registered. Now, you notice Elon didn't say anything about registration, but my understanding is that they must be registered voters in order to sign the petition. So the question becomes, is this an inducement or a reward for registration, even though Elon Musk didn't say so out loud? It's only implicit. So as a defense attorney, I would argue, if this came to trial, that his intent was explicit. It had nothing to do with the registration. But then the prosecution would have a pretty good argument, too, which is, hey, only people who are registered are allowed to sign the petition. So the inducement, the intent here, is inherent.
Yeah, I mean, if he wins the election, clearly they're not going to go after him. Listen, he's also said that if he's elected, he would put Musk in charge of a new government efficiency commission with the power to recommend changes to federal rules and make cuts at federal agencies. And that seems like a quid pro quo right there, right? So is it, or is it just politics as usual and big donors get big jobs?
This is much less problematic than the giant foam check being given to people for signing a petition, because, as you just said, it's something that happens fairly often. I mean, the people who end up in the cabinet or even all the way down to ambassadors, are they a part of a nationwide search for the best person for the job? Maybe. Sometimes they're people who just happen to have $1 million that happen to go towards a good cause, meaning a campaign. I don't know. But the bottom line is this seems much less likely to be something the federal government or state authorities would be interested in, even if it is a quid pro quo. Though they're going to be far more interested in this showy display of paying people essentially to sign a petition and possibly also to register.
So the answer is it depends.
With all legal things, Tom, it is often, it depends. I have to hedge.
Thank you, Counselor. That was worth the money. Danny Savalos, thank you very much. Coming up next, some cities have earned the reputation of being a so-called climate haven. Why disasters in places like Asheville are proving climate havens may not actually exist. So as extreme weather becomes more frequent, some towns that were once considered climate havens, more safe from things like wildfires, hurricanes, and flooding, they're now getting hit with devastating disasters. Like Asheville, North Carolina, where residents are still cleaning up after the devastation from Hurricane Hallie. We checked back in with our own Hallie Jackson. She first talked to these folks 3 years ago. She moved to Asheville to escape extreme weather. And here's Hallie with more.
To Melissa Booth, Asheville may never look the same.
It's gone. I mean, it's completely gone. This is where I enjoyed so many hours of relaxing and enjoying the river.
Her favorite hangouts destroyed by the flooding after Hurricane Helene. And it's along this river where we first met Booth and her husband 3 years ago, after they'd moved here from coastal Georgia.
Was climate change the only reason that you decided to move?
I would say it was the biggest reason.
Asheville had earned a reputation as a so-called climate haven, along with places like Duluth and Buffalo. Not immune to climate change impacts, but maybe more resilient, which came up in our conversation with Booth, a climate scientist.
There's also no hurricanes, no big tornadoes, no violent weather patterns.
Today,
the best data showed that it was insulated from intense hurricanes, from severe droughts. After having lived through this flooding, I realized that I was wrong to think that Asheville is a climate haven or that there is a such thing as a climate haven.
More than 90% of counties in the U.S. have had at least one disaster claim filed. And over the next 30 years, some estimates predict 7.5 million Americans could move because of climate risk.
When they think about buying a home, they think about
where to live in a way they just didn't 20 years ago.
Experts say it's not about zero risk, just how much and what kind. From wildfires out west to extreme rain and snowfall near the Great Lakes to, yes, inland flooding in places like North Carolina.
We need to have strong plans for when this happens again, because it will. It's going to happen to every community across the U.S.
But Booth has no plans to move again.
In natural systems, resilience is the ability to bounce back. And that's what I want Asheville and all communities around the planet to have, the ability to bounce back. And I want to be part of that solution.
Hallie Jackson, NBC News.
And our thanks to Hallie for that report. That's a wrap for this hour. Our coverage resumes right now on News Now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.